Who does decide what is right and what is wrong? Who can tell what is legal from what is illegal? And what if the people in power, able to make this distinction, are just following their own agenda, ignoring the rest of society? In such a flawed and unbalanced structure, can we really consider rebelling against the system a proper crime? Good evening everyone, and welcome back to Nerd Pain Rant, a series in which I try to make a creative living out of my 2 degrees in criminology. In today's episode we are going to talk about a show in which the structural and inherent division and inequalities of a society represent the core aspect of the narration, in which violent rebellion appears to be the only rational solution. Violent and spectacular, today we're talking of course about Arcane. Before we continue, if you enjoy what you've been doing so far and want to support me in this channel, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe and hit the notification bell, and if you want me to analyze anything you might enjoy, leave it in a comment. I want this to be a very open conversation. Now, I never played League of Legends. The only thing I know about the game is that it was more socially accepted than doing karate and reading manga while I was in high school. When the first season of Arcane was announced, everybody was thrilled. All of my classmates in college were hyped, and we were all looking forward for its release because it was a perfect excuse to not writing our final chapters. And when season 1 released, my supervisor didn't hear from me for weeks. The whole aesthetic was magnificent, the character design was peak, and the soundtrack was so on point to be almost bone-chilling. After her introduction, Jinx completely stole the show. Every time she was on screen, I was bamboozled by her magnificent design, long, flashy set of blue braids. You combine that with her erratic agility and a gun-based fighting style, I'm hooked forever. While I thought that season 2 was a little bit too rushed, Arcane is an absolute must-watch. Even if you don't know the lore, if you didn't ever play the game, the character design alone and the soundtrack are enough to get you hooked since minute 1. But what is Arcane about? And this is a section if you haven't been on social media for the past 5 years. Created by Christian Link and Alex Yee, Arcane takes place in the world of League of Legends, focusing specifically on the steampunk-based twin cities of Piltover and Zone. Piltover, the shining city of progress that thrives on innovation and prosperity, and Zone, the industrial undercity that struggles with poverty and pollution. The series explored the tension and the differences between the two cities and the way of living of its inhabitants, focusing on the intertwined fate of 2 sisters, Violet and Powder, as the discrepancy and tension of the 2 cities keep tearing them apart. How do we approach Arcane from a criminological perspective? There are several elements in Arcane that make the whole case study extremely interesting from a criminological point of view. First of all, it's the setting. The decision of using a cyberpunk narrative allows to see Arcane as a complete and open contraposition to our capitalistic society, in which the one having the power stands literally on top, trampling and crushing everyone without any form of authority. We could study the street gang running in Zone, or the corrupt elites of Piltover that are ignoring the needs of the most, turning a blind eye to the corruption and the devastation they are causing themselves. But in Season 2, there was an absolute masterpiece of work in showcasing and portraying how the structural division between Piltover and Zone is the inherent cause of the friction between the 2 cities, and how that friction, once exacerbated throughout repetitive use of brute force, will only result into riot and civil war. The way in which that was depicted, specifically in the first half of Season 2, they're focusing more on the urban and the underground and the pulp aspect of the world of Arcane, perfectly aligns with a branch of color criminology's approach toward deviance that sees crime not only as a law-breaking behavior, but also as a social and political critique toward the existing status quo, reinterpreting therefore deviance as a form of resistance. And to understand the event occurring in Season 2 of Arcane, no theory thinks it's better suited than the status frustration by Albert Cohen, combining elements from the differential association theory, that spoiler alert we're going to use for the Hell of a Boss episode, and the anomy theory that we are going to use for the Death Note episode. Albert Cohen tried to understand from a different point of view the origin of the deviant and criminal behavior. Specifically, Cohen focuses attention on the young delinquent subcultures, observing that what we define as deviance wasn't something that simply originated from the single individual. On the contrary, according to Cohen, the process of creation of what we define as crime was the result of a collaborative social activity. Crime was originated throughout discussion, throughout interaction, and because of that, the simple criminal activity was able to transcend its inherent value, thanks to the fact that it was perpetrated and orchestrated in groups, it was able to become something more, gaining a meaning far superior to its single perpetrators. The deviance created throughout the interaction was able to obtain a symbolic meaning. What Cohen also observed was that the fact that the kind of deviance created throughout the interaction of young delinquents was moved by a very specific and unique matrix, a non-utilitaristic malice. This kind of deviance didn't have any specific purpose, any channel direction. It was just a destructive force aiming toward the injustice of the status quo. What Cohen argued is that this kind of deviance was originated by a feeling of frustration towards society, that from one side offered the perspective of success as something that is easily accessible to everyone, but on the other end doesn't equally provide opportunities. This discrepancy caused, in particular in the younger generation, a sense of frustration, self-hatred, and low self-esteem that Cohen defined as status frustration. And to resolve this internal struggle, according to Cohen, there is only one option: collective rebellion. By redefining a new set of values and rules and aiming to dismantling the existing paradigm, the rising delinquents that felt ignored by the society desire to found a new system that revolves around a more destructive core that provides instant gratification. Now, how do we apply this framework to the case study that is offered to us by Arcane? Well, before to dive into it, we need to understand a little bit of the context in which Arcane takes place. In the first half of Season 2, we had a chance to understand the struggle between Piltover and Zone, and how they are facing the consequences of Jinx's attack at the Parliament at the end of Season 1. Attacked and wounded in their own home twice, the Topsiders, the inhabitant of Piltover, decide to march over the citizens of Zone. And while the official explanation is to trying to find Jinx and make her accountable for crimes, we can tell that the actual intent is to reassert their position of power and dominance over the inhabitants of the Undercity. And at the same time, the Undercity of Zone is facing a similar crisis. With the death of Zilko, kingpin of the Underground, a power vacuum was created that led the criminal gangs of the Undertown to launch an all-out war on the streets to rise to the top of the criminal order. Abandoned by society, crushed from Piltover's law enforcement, and terrorized by street gangs, the inhabitants of Zone are completely desperate. And in such a scenario, there is only one thing that can allow those people to keep going, and that's hope. And hope can manifest itself in many ways: the dream of a better tomorrow, the hope for a better situation, the dream of a brighter future. And in the case of Arcane, hope manifested itself in the figure of Jinx. Daughter of the war between these two cities, with her biological parents being killed by the law enforcement of Piltover, and her own downtown family being destroyed due to the war, Jinx is the twisted result of the structural inequalities. She was raised in Zone alongside other orphans, in which kids neglected and abandoned by the upward society got used to the idea that crime, violence, and oppression represent the norm. Though Jinx's evolution from a scoundrel committing small crimes to survive in a hostile environment to terrorist has more to do with a psychological evolution and her emotional scars, it's undeniable that her action at the end of Season 1 had a massive impact, repercussion, and resonance. By blowing up the Parliament, Jinx is not only declaring war to a society that took everything from her family, her friends, her chance to have a normal life, and a society that is now threatening her future. But Jinx is also sending a message. Piltover will now pay the price for its oppression. But once we analyze the effect of Jinx's action, we can tell that the repercussion and the implication don't stop to the mere crime. The fact that Jinx, as a commoner from Zone, was able not only to rise, but to make her voice so loud that even Piltover started to fear her, was enough to ignite the spark of hope. The destruction of Piltover's parliament acquired more of a symbolic meaning that overshadowed the act itself. And at the same time, Jinx's motivation became more than just hers. Her pain, her rage, became the pain and rage of a whole community, pushed down and mistreated for far too long. With her action, Jinx showed to the people of Zone that rebellion not only is an option, but it's also possible, and therefore should be a moral imperative. In showing that resisting and rebelling toward the status quo represent a concrete choice, Jinx, even if unwillingly, was able to become more than something as a simple terrorist. She transcended to the voice of a subculture, to a freedom fighter, a symbol of rebellion and hope. her value of symbol became even bigger than her. At the beginning of Rebellion, Jinx is reluctant and is reclusing herself, to a point that when she presents herself as Jinx in front of a police officer, she's not believed, showing us how the idea of Jinx was already fused with stories and legends, become more of her own mere person. From that moment on, we see graffiti of Jinx all around Zone. People start dyeing the hair with that iconic blue, showing us that now a proper movement is starting, fueled by years of repression and injustice, transforming the Undercity in a powder keg ready to explode. This is where the perspective of Cohen finds its perfect application, because deviance is a product of a community. Thanks to the collective dynamic, it's able to give a more profound meaning to their own action. The people in Zone aren't simply vandalizing or protesting. They are rebelling against a structurally unfair and unequal society that has been neglecting and dehumanizing them for years. We can also draw an ulterior parallelism between the act and the events of Arcane Season 2 and the theory offered to us by Cohen. In the non-utilitaristic matrix, the one showcased in Zone is a destructive rebellion. There is no intention of repairing the mistake of the society or work to solve the inequalities alongside the citizens of Piltover. What people of Zone want is to tear the broken system apart, rejecting Piltover's ideals of order, progress and morality, and championing, on the other end, principle of anarchy, chaos and freedom as an alternative. Product of a systematic oppression, Jinx is able to transcend her own person, becoming the voice of the voiceless, transforming her act of terrorism into a pure expression of rebellion as a cry for identity in a neglecting society. And now you have it, guys. You know a little bit more about criminology than 10 minutes ago. And the next time you're out with your colleagues, you're having an aperitif, the conversation is dying, you can try to spice the situation up by going, "Did you ever consider the increase of crime rates as a cultural response toward a neglecting society?" But what do you think? Do you think Cohen's theory applied well to the case study of Jinx and Arcane? Or other theories could have been applied? Please let me know in the comments down below. And if you like this episode, what we have been doing so far, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to be updated. And if you want to hear me ranting on a semi-daily basis, also don't forget to check the other social media pages: TikTok, Instagram, Rednote, and the second I find out how to split the audio from the video, Spotify. Well, thank you for joining me today again, and up until next time, have a nice rest of the evening.